on behalf of an incredible man, a man I'm proud to call my father. Before I begin, on behalf of my mother, my brothers, and myself, I'd like to thank all of you for those who traveled near and far to be here today, to pay respects to my father. This last week, many of his friends, contacts, and former colleagues have reached out to my family to offer their deepest condolences and share special anecdotes highlighting my father's contributions to their lives. Hearing that deep personal connection from those whose lives he's touched has been an overwhelmingly emotional experience for my family and I. We couldn't be more thankful for it. My father, Louis Vincent Avalon, was a man of many things. He was a husband, he was a father, he was a grandfather, he was a businessman, he was a founder, he was a partner, he was an artist, he was an athlete, he was a teacher, he was a mentor, he was a friend. To my brothers and I, he was a hero. My father was born in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, in a neighborhood and a city with its own true grit. He was the fourth child of Italian immigrants that migrated to New York from Naples in the 1900s, early 1900s. His parents weren't exactly lovers. They didn't have the choices we have today when it comes to choosing a partner. Their marriage was arranged by their families, the two patriarchs back in Naples. And as my father would say, it was not a good arrangement. This made his home life a major source of tension. Therefore, he did what he needed to do to protect himself. He avoided home like the plague, spent most of his times on the streets, he would say, learning from the other kids in the neighborhood, picking up lifelong skills, I guess. Best of all, he learned how to survive. There he attended Lafayette High School, an institution that seemed to breed a generation of talent, with its distinguished alumni like Larry King, Sandy Koufax, and John Franco. After graduation, he went to serve in the Navy. He wasn't at sea for more than 2 weeks before falling overboard in the middle of the night somewhere off the coast of Cuba. Luckily, very luckily, someone saw him go over and called the Coast Guard with his exact location. He treaded water for 45 minutes in shark-infested water with nothing but the complete darkness of the night. That would have been the end for me. But he ended up serving a total of 2 years before determining what would later call his life work. So he made it. One of my favorite defining stories that my father ever told us was when he began his first job buying and selling ice cream at Coney Island the summer of 1947. He was 10. He'd go over on the train in the morning, buy the balloons for a nickel, and resell them on the beach for a quarter. By noon, he'd be out of balloons, and instead of going home and calling it a day, as I imagine most 10-year-olds would, he didn't. Instead, he decided to use a portion of his earnings from the balloons to buy ice cream and sell it on the beach. Why walk to the boardwalk in the scorching sand when he could come to you? And that was just what he did. He rode the train home, borrowed a cooler from the garage, rode back, bought about 15 ice cream bars, and was back on the beach at the peak of the afternoon heat. It was so hot, no one seemed to mind paying a quarter for ice cream, he said, chuckling. Just as long as they didn't have to wait online at the boardwalk. Within the hour, he sold all his ice cream, which more than doubled his profits for the day. Not so bad for being 10. Stunned by the sheer brilliance of this 10-year-old brain, I was hungry for more. So what happened next, I asked. After hearing that story, he could have probably just told me he saved enough money to rent his own place and I would have believed him. Adria, what do you think I did, he said in a way that only my father could say. Without waiting for a reply, he said, I went back the next day and I bought double, and then the next day triple, and so on. Everyone was buying my ice cream. I was a sensation. That summer I was making more money a week than my father. That was a good one. After completing his service in the Navy, it was time for a change of scenery, and with that he took a drive to Miami me with little money in his pocket, and for the time being, he never looked back. He got a job at the Fountain Blue, starting as bellhop, quickly adding valet driver and pool boy to his repertoire. It was where he stuck up a friendship with a guest from the hotel who happened to be in the wig business. No one could quite remember his name. But anyway, he noticed my dad hustling when he would stay at the hotel and took a liking to him. My dad said he knew he wanted to make money and he knew I loved women. So he convinced me to go back to school in New York and go to hairdressing school. There were certainly worse things than being around women all day for my dad. And with that, his Miami days were a thing in the past, and he was back to his roots in Brooklyn. He was working and going to school in Brooklyn until he got a job in Manhattan at Larry Matthews' famous 24-hour salon. He was on the night shift. One can only imagine whose hair he was doing in the middle of the night. Once Larry saw how talented he was, he knew he was the perfect person to open and manage his new salon in Paramus, New Jersey. He had just moved to the city and thought that his clientele would be based in New York, but he decided to take him up on his offer and started the reverse commute to Paramus. He was 22 at the time, and the salon was a big hit. Once the word got out that all the stylists were talented and extremely good-looking men, young women, young and old, started flocking there in packs. Then, as fate would have it, Larry couldn't keep up with the demand of his shops and asked my father if he was interested in buying it, and that was the start of his career. He was 23, the owner of the busiest shop in Bergen County, one of the many that he went on to own. Fast forward a year, my father was doing a wedding party for one of his clients who was getting married at the time, and all was going well until he saw the junior bridesmaid waiting in his chair. So he went over to the receptionist and said, "I don't do kids. I don't know why she's here." Seeing as if he didn't have a choice, though, he begrudgingly did the little girl's hair. 14 years later, they meet again, this time at another salon my dad opened in Ridgewood. The little girl who was all grown up, and most of you know now as my mother. As they say now, the rest is history. Anyone that knows my father knows how much he loves to laugh, whether at himself or at the expense of anyone else. He had a chronic no-filter condition where any thoughts that came to his mind, he'd say aloud at any given time. The more inappropriate and untimely, the better. The more my mom tried to discreetly shush him, the louder he'd become. Grey Goose martinis, the market, full-bodied reds, dining with friends, technology gadgets of all kind were amongst his favorite things. But above all, he loved nothing more than to spend Sundays at home with his family gathered around while my mom was cooking away in the kitchen. When one of the first computers came out, he dedicated a good decade to his Gateway 1000, studying it, experimenting with it, learning it inside and out until he was a master. After that, he developed a passion for all things technology related, up until his last iPhone 10. How many 81-year-olds do you know that could own and operate an iPhone 10? Not many, I presume. He was the first man to hire and fire me while working my first job at Total Concept. I was 15 and he was determined to teach me some good old-fashioned work ethic. He was not going to show favoritism towards me in front of his other employees either. He might have overcompensated on that one. There were few rules in the house that my father took seriously, and going to work as soon as we were the age was one of them. Don't forget, this is the same man that didn't retire until he was 80. The man prided himself on working hard and expected nothing less from his offspring. Another utterly intolerable insult to my father was disrespect and defiance. So you can imagine how he felt about me for those 10 plus years while I was going through my teenager phase. He taught us how to ski, how to ride a bike, and how to swing a club. I said to swing a golf ball, but it's to swing a club. How to appreciate the arts and culture. This was the same man who, over a course of several years, we pretended to ignore his advice and act like our problems were none of his business. In reality, we hung on to this man's every word. My father has always been our biggest inspiration because his story is one of the sentimental American dream. He started with nothing, without money, without education, and without any idea where to start. His parents never gave him anything. Everything he accumulated in his life, he worked hard to acquire. Educating himself was no exception. He became well-read in history, geography, finance, and the arts. He taught himself how to ski and how to play golf, and then he taught us. He had a deep desire to become more cultured and worldly, inspiring him to find it at the greatest museums in New York City, like the Met and the Museum of Natural History. He put himself in the same circles of important people to learn from them, and that he did. He was the most tenacious person we knew, ferocious, focused, and fueled by the need to be his own man, which he accomplished in countless ways until the very, very end. To him, it wasn't my way or the highway. It was my way or my other way. In his path, things moved. Nothing stayed still. He was primal, preserving, and on fire with the possibility that something good was just about to happen if you only worked hard enough to make it so. And when he got sick 20 years ago, he fought